It is September 1901. The sun beats down on the endless landscape of the Karoo, a semi-arid desert in the heart of South Africa. Dust rises in slow, shimmering veils, clinging to the boots of 300 men who trudge through the heat. Their uniforms are torn, their faces carved by exhaustion and grit, yet their eyes burn with something unbroken. These are the bitter einders, the last fighters of the Boer commandos. For 3 relentless years, they've waged war against the might of the British Empire, and though their bodies are failing, their resolve remains like tempered steel. Their leader, Jan Smuts, rides near the front. Once a lawyer from the Cape, he now cuts the figure of a weather-beaten soldier, his sharp eyes scanning the horizon. His commander has been reduced to ghosts of their former selves, half-starved, short of ammunition, but still defiant. As they march deeper into enemy territory, a farmer appears over a ridge, his coat flapping in the wind. Breathless, he blurts out a warning, or an opportunity. "English cavalry," he gasps, 200 men with guns and over 300 horses. Smuts listens in silence. Beside him, a young soldier named Deneys Reitz studies the man's trembling hands. Civilians often bring rumors, not intelligence, but they have nothing left to lose. Smuts turns to his men, his voice quiet, almost calm. "We attack," he says. "If we don't get those horses and ammunition, we are finished." It's madness, but also necessity. Their survival depends on those horses, those guns, that food. Reitz has just 2 cartridges left in his rifle, yet he mounts up without hesitation. Around him, a handful of riders follow, their horses thin and mud-caked, their hearts beating with the pulse of desperation. They ride out across dry veldt, past the skeletons of old thorn trees and the cracked beds of streams. Every hoofbeat feels like defiance. The Karoo, silent and ancient, is about to witness another battle, one that will barely earn a line in official history, yet will come to embody everything the Boer commandos stood for: audacity, endurance, and the refusal to yield. This is not just another war story, it's more than a story. To understand how men like Smuts and Reitz came to fight beneath this pitiless sun, we must look back 14 years earlier to a different kind of discovery. In 1886, amidst a throng of fortune seekers, an English mining prospector named George Harrison found himself broke and desperate on his way to Barberton. He took a job building a house for a Boer widow on a farm called Langlaagte, near present-day Johannesburg. With experience from the Australian goldfields, Harrison's eye was quickly drawn to a glint of gold in a rock near the farmhouse. Partnering with George Walker, a Lancashire coal miner, they secured a contract with the widow to prospect on her farm. Harrison rushed to President Paul Kruger in Pretoria, rock in hand, to obtain a prospecting license. Kruger, amused by Harrison's eagerness, dubbed him the Soeker, the discoverer, and granted him a free claim to mine the farm. In a move that would become legendary for its sheer misfortune, Harrison sold his claim for a mere £10 and moved on. Unbeknownst to him, he had just walked away from what would later be uncovered as the richest goldfield ever discovered. Harrison's find transformed a sleepy Highveld farm into a city almost overnight. Within a decade, Johannesburg swelled from a few hundred farmers to over 100,000 people, miners, adventurers, conmen, and dreamers from every corner of the world. The Transvaal Republic, once a dusty backwater, became one of the richest places on earth. By 1898, its goldfields were producing nearly a third of the world's output, turning the Boer Republic into a global power almost by accident. The British, who controlled the coastal colonies of the Cape and Natal, watched uneasily. They had granted the Boers self-rule after the First Anglo-Boer War, assuming the farmers of the interior would remain dependent. Instead, the seemingly inexhaustible gold reefs of the Witwatersrand had shifted the balance of power. To London, this was intolerable. To the Boers, it was vindication, proof that God favored their independence. The gold rush didn't just bring wealth. It brought thousands of British fortune seekers, the Uitlanders, whose culture, language, and politics clashed with the fiercely independent Afrikaners. President Paul Kruger, determined to preserve Boer identity, refused these newcomers voting rights and imposed heavy taxes on the mines. To the British, this was tyranny. To Kruger, it was self-preservation. Tensions escalated in 1895 when Cecil Rhodes, empire builder and Prime Minister of the Cape, backed a reckless coup attempt known as the Jameson Raid. It failed spectacularly, humiliating Britain and driving the two nations further apart. The pressure on Kruger intensified, not just from the mining magnates, but from the highest levels of British government. Lord Alfred Milner, the British High Commissioner in the Cape, and Joseph Chamberlain, Britain's colonial secretary, actively encouraged the Uitlander rebellion. They pressed their demands hard on Kruger, urging him to reform or face serious consequences. Negotiations soon collapsed, and the path to war became inevitable. The British government claimed moral authority, championing the Uitlanders' cause. Yet, with Cecil Rhodes and Alfred Milner driving the policy, the true motivation seemed far simpler: securing the immense gold wealth of the Rand. During those strained pre-war negotiations, President Kruger saw the deception clearly. His frustration boiled over into stark accusation. "It is our country that you want." The stage was set. On the 11th of October 1899, after months of ultimata and failed diplomacy, the Boer Republic struck first. Boer commandos, farmers on horseback, rode across the frontiers in the early dawn, besieging the towns of Kimberley, Mafeking, and Ladysmith. The British expected an easy victory, but the first shots of the Second Anglo-Boer War shattered that illusion. The Boers fought like no European army Britain had ever faced. They were mobile, invisible, and deadly accurate. Their Mauser rifles fired smokeless rounds, leaving no telltale puffs for artillery to target. In the open veldt and stony koppies, British cavalry charges met walls of unseen fire. The Redcoats, trained for parade ground warfare, found themselves ambushed, outflanked, and humiliated. In December 1899, remembered bitterly as Black Week, the Empire suffered 3 catastrophic defeats. Nearly 3,000 British soldiers were killed or captured in a single week. Newspapers in London called it a national disgrace. But the British response was swift and overwhelming. Within months, 500,000 troops, drawn from across the empire, poured into South Africa. Against them stood barely 60,000 Boers. By mid-1900, British forces had crushed the sieges and occupied the Boer capitals of Bloemfontein and Pretoria. To imperial generals, the war seemed won. But they didn't understand the Boers. These were men of the veldt, not bound to cities or capitals. They melted into the landscape, forming small mobile commandos that could strike and vanish before the British could respond. Those who refused to surrender, the bitter einders, vowed to fight to the last. Among them was Jan Smuts, who had traded his legal robes for a rifle. The war now shifted from formal battles to a brutal, unseen struggle, one that would foreshadow modern guerrilla warfare. The British, unprepared for this new kind of war, turned to the ruthless efficiency of Lord Kitchener. His strategy was simple and devastating: starve the enemy. Farmhouses were burnt, fields destroyed, livestock slaughtered. Families, mostly women and children, were herded into concentration camps, where disease and malnutrition claimed tens of thousands of lives. It was a policy meant to break the Boer's spirit. Instead, it hardened it. As one British officer wrote, quote, "We destroy their homes by day and fight them by night, yet they do not yield." The term bitter einde, once a sneer, became a badge of honor. By 1901, the war had entered its cruelest phase. Small bands of Boer fighters, some no more than a few dozen men, roamed the country, striking supply lines, derailing trains, and vanishing into the mountains. Christian de Wet, Koos de la Rey, and Louis Botha led these elusive commandos, pursued relentlessly by tens of thousands of British troops. Each became a folk hero, his legend spreading faster than the columns that chased him. But one commando stood apart, a band of only 300 men, led by the young General Jan Smuts. Their mission was as daring as it was improbable: to invade the British-held Cape Colony itself, ignite rebellion among the Afrikaners there, and force Britain's hand. It was a journey that would take them across the wildest country in southern Africa, over rivers, through mountains, and into history. And at Smuts' side rode a wiry young soldier named Deneys Reitz, whose diary of those years would one day become one of the most vivid personal accounts of the war. As they prepared to cross the Orange River and disappear into the Cape, Reitz wrote simply, quote, "We were to enter the enemy's country, to live off the land, and to fight until death or victory. None of us doubted which it would be." It is the dead of the night, and the air hangs thick with the promise of rain. Along the rocky banks of the Orange River, Jan Smuts' commando moves like shadows, a column of 300 men and their weary horses, silent except for the sound of hooves slipping on loose stone. The Orange is no gentle stream. It begins high in the Drakensberg, 3,000 meters above sea level, and carves its way westward through the continent, a churning river of brown water that separates the Free State from the Cape. To cross it is to step into the lion's den. Deneys Reitz leads his horse down a steep path, following a Basotho guide whose torch flickers in the night. The descent is perilous. Loose shale slides underfoot, and the scent of wet rock fills the air. "We toiled down a path," Reitz later wrote, "that no mounted troops had ever dared." When they finally reach the water's edge, the river looks almost alive, swollen, cold, and fast. One by one, the men coax their horses in. The current seizes them, dragging at their legs and kit. Saddlebags tear loose, rifles vanish beneath the foam. For a moment, the darkness erupts in panic, snorts, splashes, curses. Then, one by one, they emerge on the far bank, dripping and gasping. As the first light of dawn brushes the cliffs above them, Reitz looks back. The Free State lies behind them. Ahead lies British territory. They have crossed into the Cape Colony. The men climb the cliffs on the southern bank, pulling their exhausted mounts behind them. When they finally crest the ridge, the land opens out before them. A vast plateau of yellow grass, dotted with huts and cattle. Smoke curls lazily from cooking fires. For a brief moment, the scene feels peaceful, almost welcoming. The men fan out to barter for tobacco, mealies, and fodder. For the first time in weeks, their rifles rest across their saddles rather than in their hands. But the war has changed. In the early days, both sides had agreed this was a white man's war. Black Africans, they said, would be left out of it. That agreement has long since broken apart. Across the country, tens of thousands of black men have joined both the British and the Boer cause, as scouts, sentries, and labourers. They dig trenches, drive wagons, shoe horses, and bury the dead. To the British, they are essential. To the Boers, they are an unpredictable threat. Smuts learns that lesson quickly. Reitz and a handful of riders are moving past an old mission church when the still morning air explodes. A burst of rifle fire shatters the quiet. Bullets whip past their heads. The shooters are inside the church, Basotho fighters, allied with the British. Reitz's horse rears, hooves flailing. He kicks hard, galloping for cover as smoke billows from the windows. Behind him, hundreds of armed men rise from the grass, their rifles flashing in the sun. It's chaos. The Boers scatter, returning fire as they retreat through the scrub. Horses scream. A bullet tears through the jaw of Reitz's mount. He dismounts and ends her life with a single shot. When the smoke clears, 6 Boers are dead, 30 horses gone, and Smuts' commando is rattled to the core. The tranquil plateau that had looked so inviting has turned into a trap. Smuts gathers his men that night under the stars. His face is expressionless, his tone controlled. They have crossed into hostile land, he reminds them. They will find no sympathy here. From now on, every step will be a fight for survival. Word spreads fast. Within days, British forces in the Cape know exactly who has crossed the Orange. General French, one of the Empire's best, commands 50,000 troops in the region, guarding key towns and supply lines. French has orders: find Smuts, corner him, and end the invasion before it ignites rebellion among the Cape Afrikaners. Smuts knows he is being hunted. He splits his commando into small groups, moving only at night, clinging to the high ridges of the Stormberg and Sneeuwberg mountains. For weeks, they dodge patrols and columns. Then, at Moordenaars-Poort, murderers pass. Fate nearly ends their campaign. A British patrol ambushes Smuts and 3 of his men in a narrow gorge. Gunfire erupts at point-blank range. Smuts' horse goes down, and he is thrown to the ground. Bullets strike the dust inches from his head. He rolls into a dry gully and lies still as the patrol sweeps past. When the shooting stops, he crawls out, shaken but alive. His companions are not so lucky. All 3 lie dead among the rocks. That night, Smuts rejoins his men, his face drawn, but his eyes alight with grim determination. He has cheated death once, but he knows the odds are narrowing. By mid-September, the commando is trapped. Thousands of British troops close in from every direction. Exhausted, starving, and nearly out of ammunition, the Boers take shelter at a Dutch farmhouse on the edge of the Stormberg range. Then comes a knock at the door. A hunchback cripple, his clothes ragged, his eyes sharp. He claims to know a secret path, a way through the cliffs that the British won't be watching. Desperate, Smuts agrees. Under cover of night, the commando follows the man through the mist, along a path so narrow that horses slip and slide on the edge of a drop. Voices echo below, British sentries, close enough to hear the jingle of spurs. Then the path ends abruptly in darkness. Before them lies the cliff face, steep, treacherous, nearly vertical. Reitz stares into the abyss. It was, he would later write, the nearest approach to the vertical attempted by any mounted force during the war. One by one, the men and their horses begin to descend. Grass and shale tear loose beneath their boots. Some slide, others fall. Reitz feels his horse's hooves skid, the world spinning. Then, by miracle, they land in a tangle of grass below. When dawn breaks, every man has made it down alive. The British never knew they were there. They have escaped, but their ordeal is only beginning. They ride for 40 hours without rest. Some fall asleep in their saddles and topple to the ground. Others march on foot, leaving limping horses through the mud. At last, they stumble upon a farmhouse and collapse inside. For a few brief hours, they sleep like the dead. But at first light, the alarm is raised. British columns are closing in. The commando flees once more, rain beginning to fall in cold, relentless sheets. The downpour quickly turns the ground into sludge. Horses sink to their knees. The men's clothes cling to them like lead. Night falls and the temperature plummets. Their guide loses his way. There is no fire, no shelter, only wind and freezing rain. Reitz later calls it the most terrible night of the war. The sleet hardens into ice. The grain bag he wears as a coat freezes solid. The men groan and curse, but there's nothing to do but keep moving. By dawn, the storm has done what the British could not. 14 men and 50 horses are dead. The survivors stand in silence, their faces hollow, their eyes rimmed with frost. Those who lived through that night will carry its memory forever. From then on, they call themselves die groot reëntkerels, the big rain men. Their numbers have dwindled, their supplies are gone, but their spirit is unbroken. They've survived hunger, exhaustion, and the cold bite of the Cape Mountains. Every mile they travel now feels stolen from death itself. When morning comes, Reitz saddles what's left of his little roan horse, her coat dull, her breath steaming in the chill. The commando rides again, skeletal but determined. Somewhere out there, beyond the horizon, Smuts promises, lies their chance. Food, ammunition, and horses enough to keep the fight alive. For 2 weeks they press on, living off scraps hunted across the plateau. Each night they light no fires, speak in whispers, and sleep in the open veldt under blankets stiff with frost. Then, one morning, as Reitz rides out with a small patrol, a farmer appears on the road. He brings news that quickens every heartbeat. A British cavalry camp lies in the valley ahead, 200 men, a machine gun, and more than 300 horses. Smuts listens, eyes narrowing. If they can take that camp, they will not only survive, they will rise again. Dawn creeps across the Karoo in a pale, muted glow. The world smells of dust and distant rain. Deneys Reitz adjusts the bandolier slung across his chest, 2 cartridges left. Around him, the other scouts sit astride gaunt horses, eyes scanning the valley ahead. They move quietly, following the farmer's directions until the first tents of the British encampment come into view. Campfires flicker faintly in the half-light. Soldiers stir among the wagons. Then, without warning, a group of 15 mounted men appears from behind a ridge. British troopers, the 17th Lancers. For a heartbeat, both sides hesitate. The Boers are dressed in captured British tunics, their insignia still sewn on. The Lancers mistake them for comrades. "Don't fire, we're the 17th, one calls. Reitz doesn't answer. He dismounts, raises his rifle, and fires. The crack splits the morning. Horses rear, men cry out, and chaos erupts. Within seconds, half the patrol is down. The survivors bolt for the camp, shouting warnings that come too late. The English horses, though faster and stronger, are halted by a gate. As they hesitate, Boer bullets rip through them. The few that manage to escape gallop towards a stony ridge, dismounting and scrambling for cover behind the rocks. Reitz and a dozen others, hot on their heels, find themselves exposed in the open veldt. They opened fire almost point blank before we even reached the outcrop, Reitz recalls. Worse still, a mountain gun caught us completely by surprise, blasting away from our left flank not 30 yards off, and a machine gun joined the chorus. They make it to a rocky outcrop, mere yards from their adversaries, the English camp visible just a stone's throw away. Soldiers scramble into defensive positions, clutching their weapons. The Boers' pursuit corners them, leaving them practically mixed in with the English soldiers. Hope arrives in the nick of time. General Smuts, with the rest of the commando, appears on a hill 500 meters back and opens fire, drawing the enemy's attention. The mountain gun, now targeting Smuts' men, is a few yards from Reitz. I saw the man behind it, tall, handing shells to the three working the breach, Reitz recounts. He takes aim and fires. The man spins around, sinking against the wheel. Reitz will later find him there, lifeless. The other three men at the gun abandon their deadly task and run for the camp. Reitz and Muller each take down one, but the last man disappears amidst the tents. A few yards away, English soldiers rise from behind the rocks, firing desperately. But they are no match for the Boers' marksmanship. In a matter of minutes, a dozen lie dead. A sergeant, bold or foolish, runs from the camp. Reitz's bullet finds its mark, and the man doubles over, clutching his stomach. There was a young lieutenant a few feet away, Reitz writes later. I found out later that he was a cousin of Winston Churchill. The lieutenant, Sheridan, rises twice to fire, but misses. The second time, Reitz grazes his temple. Sheridan drops, but only for a moment. He rises again, swaying. Blood streams down his face, still struggling to aim his rifle. Reitz hesitates, but Jack Boreas does not. His shot is true, and Sheridan falls. Another soldier shoots wildly at Reitz, who responds with a bullet to the man's exposed heel. The shock makes him leap up, and once again, Boreas's quick aim finds its target. The commotion of the firefight has drawn the attention of a nearby English patrol. Reitz and his men, stranded and exposed, see them approaching. Desperation gnaws at them. They are out of supplies, and the threat of British reinforcements looms large. Reitz and his comrade, Jack Boreas, exchange a knowing glance. There is only one way out. With a surge of adrenaline, the Boers leap to their feet and charge at the remaining English soldiers behind the ridge. The suddenness and audacity of the move catch the soldiers completely off guard. Surprise turns to shock, and then surrender. The soldiers, overwhelmed and outnumbered, drop their weapons. Leaving their captors on the ridge, the Boers rush into the English camp, their commando close behind. The camp is in disarray. The sight of the Boers amidst their tents triggers a panicked stampede. Soldiers scatter like startled birds, some fleeing into the thorny scrub, others throwing down their arms in defeat. In the chaos, one soldier makes a desperate bid for freedom, leaping onto a horse and attempting to ride off. Reitz's command to halt goes unheeded. A single shot rings out, and the soldier slumps lifelessly from the horse. But the fight is not over yet. As Reitz and his men disarm soldiers at a nearby kraal, a few defiant soldiers inside take aim and fire. "Hands up," Reitz roars, his voice barely audible over the din. The Boers return fire. One of them, Conradi, fires a single shot that kills one soldier and wounds another. But the remaining soldiers refuse to yield, taking cover behind a stone wall. In the heat of the moment, one of the English soldiers thrusts his rifle so close to Reitz's face that the blast scorches his cheek and neck. The searing pain is a stark reminder of how close he comes to death. The sound of gunfire has alerted the rest of the commando. They rush to Reitz's aid, and the defiant English soldiers, realizing their cause is lost, finally surrender. All but one, that is. In a last act of defiance, he tackles Reitz to the ground. Moments later, the same soldier, now disarmed and a prisoner, offers Reitz a cigarette. "You were my surprise packet," he admits, a hint of admiration in his voice. Seconds earlier they were locked in mortal combat. Now they share a smoke, just two men caught in the same storm. The small English patrol that gallops from the hills can only watch from a distance as the Boer commando ransacks the camp, emerging like giants refreshed, as Reitz puts it. They began the day exhausted and depleted. Now they are equipped with fresh horses, rifles, clothing, and enough ammunition to last them indefinitely. The exhilaration of victory and newfound confidence in their leader surges through them. The cost is minimal. 1 Boer dead and 6 wounded. A stark contrast to the 30 English dead, over 40 wounded, and numerous prisoners. Near the shattered mountain gun, Reitz finds a wounded officer, Lord Vivian. The man's uniform is soaked in blood, but he gestures for Reitz to come closer. In a voice barely above a whisper, he warns of horrors in the nearby villages, British patrols finding mutilated corpses, victims of Basotho warriors who collect body parts for medicine and power. The warning chills Reitz. He thinks of his narrow escape days earlier, and of the thin line that separates life from death in this war. Then, in an unexpected act of grace, Lord Vivian tells Reitz to take whatever he needs from his tent. Inside, Reitz finds a treasure trove, clean clothes, a fine cavalry tunic, a new rifle, and 2 horses, a grey Arab and a sturdy mule. He emerges from the tent in his new uniform, the Arab's reins in his hands. The men cheer, their laughter echoing across the field. For the first time in weeks, the commander feels whole again, armed, fed, and alive. Despite the thrill of victory, the sight of the dead English soldiers scattered across the camp fills Reitz with conflicting emotions. "I never harbored any hatred for the English," he wrote, "but I was a soldier, and I took pride in my role in the day's success." As they gather the captured supplies, Smuts surveys the battlefield. The fallen wear the insignia of the 17th Lancers, one of Britain's oldest and proudest regiments. Half a century earlier, these same men had ridden into the Valley of Death at Balaclava during the charge of the Light Brigade, 7 officers and 67 men killed in a matter of minutes, their courage immortalized in verse and song. Now, on the plains of Africa, their descendants have met another kind of death, not in a glorious charge, but in a dusty skirmish against farmers turned fighters. It is their deadliest day in 250 years of existence. Smuts later remarked that the Lancers died because they did not know how to surrender. Even in defeat, they fought with a courage the Boers could not help but admire. War is undeniably cruel, a maelstrom of sorrow and brutality. Yet, amidst the carnage, unexpected acts of humanity often emerge. A young lancer, moments after a fierce battle, offers Reitz a cigarette as they share stories of the fight. a defeated officer, displaying magnanimity in the face of loss, gifts his tunic, rifle, and horse to his young captor. These are the paradoxes of war, where compassion and conflict coexist in an unsettling dance. Amidst the remnants of the battle, amidst the fallen horses and the discarded weapons, stands Reitz's roan mare, a silent sentinel in the aftermath of chaos. She has been his steadfast companion, carrying him faithfully across hundreds of miles, from the rugged terrains of the eastern Transvaal, through the unforgiving plains of the Free State, and into the heart of the Cape. With a heavy heart, Reitz removes her saddle, a silent acknowledgement of their shared journey and her unwavering loyalty. He sets her free. A small prayer escapes his lips that a kind farmer will find her and offer her the care she deserves. She too had shown the mettle of her Free State pasture, Reitz pens later, and the marvellous endurance of the South African horse. Smuts orders the camp stripped. The men seize food, blankets, ammunition, and horses, everything they can carry. What remains, they burn. Tents, wagons, and unused shells vanish in a blaze that lights up the twilight sky. When it's done, Smuts mounts up and gives the order to move. The commando rides out in formation, their silhouettes outlined against the flames. They have transformed from fugitives into a fighting force once more. The raid at Elands River had been a resounding success for the Boers. Smuts replenished his commando's dwindling resources, transforming them into a formidable force that posed a significant threat to the English in the Cape. With renewed vigour, they ventured southeast, their sights set on the imposing Sneeuwberg Mountains, where Smuts harboured an audacious plan to strike the strategically vital port of Port Elizabeth. However, the English anticipated their move. Amidst the rugged peaks of the Sneeuwberg, they intercepted Smuts' commando, forcing them to retreat westward, back into the arid expanse of the Karoo. The battle for the Cape was far from over, and Smuts, with his resourceful commando, was determined to continue the fight, their resilience and audacity a testament to the enduring spirit of the Boer resistance. For the English, the defeat at Elands River had set a dangerous precedent. Kitchener, in a fit of fury, declared that any Boer found wearing a British uniform would be executed, a dire predicament for Smuts' commando, now clad head to toe in the spoils of war. The noose tightened around Smuts and his men. A relentless force of 40,000 British soldiers hounded their every step, Kitchener's desperation mirroring the mounting pressure from Britain. The war, a financial hemorrhage costing the Crown over £2 million a week, had dragged on far too long, and Kitchener was forced to face the reality that over 100,000 troops couldn't corner 10,000 Boer guerrillas. The conflict that was supposed to be a swift victory was now a quagmire. Yet, as the year waned, a glimmer of hope shone for the British. A shift towards mobile tactics finally bore fruit, and the ranks of the Boer resistance dwindled. The Boers' valiant struggle ultimately ended in heartbreak. In May 1902, they were forced to surrender, their cherished land transformed into a sovereign state under British dominion. The vibrant Boer culture, once a beacon of independence, was irrevocably altered. Kitchener's scorched earth policy had ravaged the once thriving agrarian societies of both republics, leaving their economies in ruins for decades to come. The Boer and black African populations were decimated by war, exile, and disease, casting a long shadow over the demographics and quality of life in the region. Destitute farmers, their livelihoods destroyed, flocked to the cities in search of work, only to find themselves trapped in a cycle of poverty. But from the ashes rose a new kind of nation, one forged in both pride and grief. The war's key players found their own paths. Jan Smuts, the audacious guerrilla leader, would rise to become South Africa's Prime Minister and trusted confidant of Winston Churchill during his darkest hours. Deneys Reitz, the young soldier who had faced death countless times, chose exile in Madagascar, unable to reconcile with the new reality. He drifted through Madagascar and London, working where he could, until the pull of Africa drew him home. When the First World War erupted, Reitz, once a fierce opponent of British rule, took up arms under their flag. He fought in German Southwest Africa, East Africa, and later on the battlefields of Europe, driven not by loyalty to empire, but by a belief that a shared struggle might heal the wounds of the past. By the war's end, he had become a decorated officer, proof that reconciliation could be forged in the crucible of conflict. Returning home, he joined Smuts in shaping the new Union of South Africa, helping to stitch together a fractured nation. He founded a law firm in Johannesburg and rose through the ranks of politics, eventually serving as Minister of Native Affairs and later as High Commissioner in London. Through it all, Reitz remained a bridge between old enemies, a man who had seen both the bitterness of war and the fragile promise of reconciliation. The Second Anglo-Boer War changed everything. It ended the age of cavalry and heralded a new kind of warfare: mobile, irregular, psychological, guerrilla war. It shaped the minds of men who would define the 20th century: Churchill, Botha, Gandhi, Smuts, each taking lessons from this bitter conflict into worlds they would later command. But for the men who fought it, the war's legacy is simpler and heavier. It lives in the memory of frozen nights and endless marches, in the faces of friends buried by the roadside, and in the knowledge that courage alone could not conquer an empire. And somewhere in the dust of the Karoo, under the same hard sun, the ghosts of Smuts' commandos still ride, lean men on thin horses, carrying with them the stubborn faith that even in defeat, freedom is never truly lost.